And so I'll go live in 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody and good day as usual. Thank you guys for joining another lunch break with the leaders for Women's Observance Month. So as you guys are coming in, we're still waiting for a couple of speakers to join us. But if you guys could, kind of go around the horn again, let us know where you guys are from, all the different syscoms. How did you hear about this webinar? Guys, if you have missed these last couple of webinars, you guys have missed some phenomenal nuggets, phenomenal information, some wonderful networking opportunities. Like I had my notes. I was telling everybody about last week's session, especially having the two doctors talk about how men can be allies as mentorship for women and advocating for women. So we really appreciate that. We appreciate Secretary Kessmeyer for putting these together. So guys, just to let you know, I am not the brains behind this operation. Secretary Kessmeyer and her team, they have been bringing all these wonderful speakers. I'm excited to have Miss Lori. No, wait, Latori. I got it. Latori and Miss Fan here today. And so yeah, let us know what you guys are eating. So I'm actually eating some pistachios today. I think one day I was cooking, today I just got a snack. I've been busy and food has been like far from my mind. But yes, let us know what you're having for breakfast, what's in your coffee, what you guys are eating for lunch, and even dinner time if we have anybody over in the Eastern Hemisphere. But yes, welcome. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Again, drop in the chat where you guys are at, where you're from, your syscoms, how did you hear about this webinar? And let us know what you guys are eating on today. This is lunch break. So I promised Secretary Kessmeyer and her team, I will be making lunch for them and taking it the next time they have this. So, they'll be able to eat good and we can eat good and then, we'll have a good time. So thank you guys for joining us today. And we look forward to the conversation. And when Secretary Kessmeyer is ready, she can take it away.
All right, Ashley, thank you. I think we're still waiting on Vice Admiral Franchetti. I think she'll join us in a couple minutes. Hopefully, we're all having a little bit of technical difficulty today. So welcome, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. This is my favorite saying. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome. We're so happy to have you here with us. This is our fourth luncheon with leaders in our series. I'm excited to tell you that we're going to try and continue these dialogues going into the future. I'm not sure what they're going to look like, but we're going to try and continue this with a whole bunch of leaders across the department. For those of you that don't already know me, I'm Kathy Kessmeyer. I'm the Acting Assistant Secretary for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. In my normal day job, I'm the Principal Deputy here at MNRA. This month, we've been hosting these virtual lunch breaks where we can really have candid conversations, frank discussions with leaders across the Secretariat, the Navy, and the Marine Corps, civilian and military leaders, all of whom have achieved really a significant level of success in their career. They have unique perspectives based on how they've navigated their journey. I have found these conversations to be really enlightening, and I hope that you have found them to be that way too. I'm confident that we're going to continue to learn from each and every one of them, and that we can take a little bit out of these conversations and apply it to our own work experiences. Today, I'm particularly pleased to have the privilege to introduce 4 more women who have distinguished themselves within the Department of the Navy. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Vice Admiral Franchetti, who's not here yet. She'll join us hopefully, and we'll hear from her. But Vice Admiral Franchetti is a native New Yorker. She received her commission in 1985. Her achievements and her accomplishments over the past 20 years are exemplary. And she's received numerous personal awards. She's commanded U.S. Naval Forces Korea, Carrier Strike Group 9, Carrier Strike Group 15, U.S. 6th Fleet, and she's also served as the Deputy Commander for U.S. Naval Forces Europe and U.S. Naval Forces Africa. She was Commander of the Joint Force Maritime Component Commander and Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Warfighting Development, which is where I met her here in the Pentagon. She's commanded the USS Ross and Desron 21. She embarked on the USS Stennis and the USNS Mercy, and she's now Director of Strategy Plans and Policy for J5, the Joint Staff. So welcome her, and hopefully we'll be able to see her shortly. I also have the privilege of introducing Rear Admiral Sarah Joyner, who's here with me in the room. Admiral Joyner is also known as Clutch. She's an F-18 pilot, earned her wings of gold, and was designated a naval aviator in 1991. Her commanding tours have included Carrier Air Wing 3, Carrier Strike Group 2, of which she later commanded as a flag officer. She's had several extended deployments in Operation Southern Watch, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom. And her assignments have included duties as an adversary pilot of the A4 Echo. All that's given her great preparation for her current role as the Chief of Legislative Affairs, and that's how I've met her here in the Pentagon. So welcome, Admiral Joyner. It's such a privilege to have you here with me today. I'm also excited to introduce two executive directors from our SysComs, both of whom have distinguished themselves in their field, Yao Fan and Jen Latore. Ms. Latore is the senior civilian for NAVFAC, and she leads all aspects of the command's business and community management for more than 19,000 employees. So this is the fun part. Jen, I get to talk about you being an avid athlete and that you love the outdoors. Jen's recognized for her ability to tackle challenges head on, persevering and transforming your operations for effectiveness. Prior to becoming the ED at NAVFAC in 2016, she served as the Director of Total Force Manpower for CNIC for 5 years. And I've known Jen for a number of years, so I'm certain that she'll share some really good nuggets of wisdom with you. Ms. Yao Fan recently became the Executive Director for NAVC. She leads more than 85,000 civilian and military personnel. She actually started her civil service career with the Navy in the 80s, but she left us for a little bit, and she started as a senior executive in the Coast Guard, where she was the Director of Acquisition Programs, and she oversaw 7 subordinate program offices and an acquisition portfolio worth $30 billion. Lucky for us, she came back to the Department of the Navy. She worked with our program executive offices, and most recently, she was dual-hatted as the Executive Director for Ship Maintenance and Modernization, while serving as the Deputy Commander for Navy Regional Maintenance Center. And now, Yao is, again, as I mentioned earlier, the Executive Director for NAVC. So on a lighter note, just to share, Yao is also known for her incredible ability to jump rope. So Yao, I'm pretty impressed. Ladies and fellow leaders, thank you for joining us. To the attendees, just a few little things to remind you. We have the Q&A feature, and I encourage all of you, as we're having this dialogue today at lunch, feel free, go ahead and type in your questions. We'll take breaks at various points to try and get to your questions. So feel free to use that Q&A feature on the Zoom to submit your questions. And so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kick it off with the first question and let any one of our leaders kind of jump in as they wish. So admirals, executives, talk to me a little bit about how you've evolved amidst change, to include COVID-19, right? We've all kind of evolved through this whole pandemic. And how do you plan for the unknown while tending to the continuous planning approach in your job? So with that, I'm just going to kick it open to anybody that wants to take that question.
Okay, well, I'm in the room, and so I was lucky enough to join Ms. Kessmeyer. So I'll just answer from my point of view is I have led in peace and in war, and I would say that quite honestly, wartime is often an easier environment because everybody understands exactly what your end state is. So and they're all dedicated to making it happen. So in peace, it's a lot more difficult to lead, I think, and I would say that for, in particular, COVID-19 was some strange hybrid in between because it doesn't feel like you're at war, but you're actually at war with a virus and you're still trying to operate and you're still trying to do all the things, and it is completely uncharted territory. So I would say the Navy plans really well for, you know, I'm going to go invade country X, I'm going to defend country Y, I need to go out and do power projection and sea control. But when it comes to pandemic, I found that we were somewhat wanting for the planning that we're so well known for. I know the plans exist, but it's one of those things of all the things that you're planning, it's the last thing that you get to. So I think, you know, what I saw was a huge learning organization where we weren't exactly sure where to focus. We knew that we still needed to get the mission done. We still needed to be forward because your Navy can't do its mission unless it's at sea and it's forward and it's actually defending our country abroad and defending our allies. And it was really interesting because it was a ground up type of realization at the commander's level as they started creating tactics, techniques, procedures, safeguards, and putting stuff in place without a full understanding of the challenge that we were facing. So the enemy was something that we really didn't have clearly defined. We hadn't studied extensively, and now we had to adapt and overcome. And I found it hugely challenging, but also hugely rewarding to try to really bring together people's minds to find the best way to do things. And it went all the way down to commanders, and you had to listen as a leader to what your commanders were experiencing and try to put that together into something that was executable. So it wasn't one of our things where we drive policy or a tactic or an instruction from the top. We had to grow it from the bottom, understanding what we were facing. And so I found this particular event to be hugely rewarding because it shows that our people can be flexible, they are innovative, and if you're a commander who's listening, you can come up and call through and find the best practices and procedures to handle anything. And I think that flexibility is something that is going to serve us well no matter what we're doing within the Navy or the broader military.
I so appreciate that answer. The agility, what we do on our normal everyday basis kind of kicks in that teamwork. What was amazing about the pandemic for me was this was truly that big event that you plan for, but you never expect to happen because it was on a global scale. Yeah. Right? We were fighting this in a multitude of theaters, including our homeland, which made it really interesting to see how we brought everyone together to really respond. We were protecting our people, and we were helping others. We were partnering, and you're right. It was a learning experience for all of us. It was great. Yao, Jen, anything you want to say?
For me, well, first
actually,
of all,
I think. Go ahead, Yao, please.
Well, before I answer the question, I would like to thank Kathy Kessmeyer. This is fantastic. Thank you very much for inviting us to share our experience. I watched your previous discussion on YouTube. I think it's just fantastic. And I'm so glad to hear that you are not going to end with just the Women's Observance Month, that you're going to continue on. So thank you very much for that. For me, for the platinum, when I was young, because we live in a world, I came from Vietnam. So the model that my parents have always prepared me is be prepared, be prepared. And so, in fact, as the world went on in 1975, we knew that the North Vietnamese were going to take over. And so each one of us would have a backpack. And then my dad would do drills, like this is what you do. You would grab your backpacks and then you run, and this is what we would do. But then at the end, we weren't execute according to the plan, but that was okay. So what I have learned is that we need to be flexible. I was in the Pentagon with September 11. I was in the Navy Yard with the September 16 shooting, and now with the COVID. What I've learned, just like what you have mentioned earlier, Kathy, that we can be prepared, we can be drilled, but never for the event that we're going to, the crisis that we're going to be happening. And so, but every planning event, it gave us something new and something consistently showing up was that our people are very resilient, and together with teamwork, we can overcome everything. And so that's what I have observed, that in the past year, even with the COVID-19, we band together. The IT, who would have imagined that within a week or 2 weeks after the stand down, the telework happening, the IT working. You know, there was some challenge, but everybody understood. So I think that was just fantastic.
Thanks, Yao. Jen, did you want to add anything?
Okay. I did. Thank you, Kathy. And again, I echo Yao's comments in terms of being a part of this amazing group of women and also being able to share our experiences. So thank you so much for the opportunity. The only thing I would add to the comments that have already been made is the fact that you know, change is constant. We're always going to change, and I think having a plan that Yao talked about is really critical, and having contingencies. But one of the best things, and Yao said this 4 times in her response, and I think that this is key, you learn every time. You learn about your resiliency, you learn about your strength, and you bring your team together and you bond over it. And so I think that we need to take a breath after COVID and say, what were we able to do as a team without a plan and come together? And I think it's just hugely powerful if we look back at how much we were able to accomplish in the last year with all of this change and risk and opportunity. A year ago, if you had told me that we would be on MS Teams with cameras in the Pentagon, I would have not believed you. And here we are. Here we are today. We've got a worldwide group. It's amazing what we were able to do. So perhaps we need more crisis because it forces us to think differently. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
With that, I'm going to pivot a little bit with our questions, and I'm going to ask all of you, what are some of women's greatest attributes for leadership, and how do each of you handle them successfully? And I think I'm going to go ahead and start with Yao.
Right. So this is my favorite questions. You know, like, hey, we as women, especially as a mom, you know, we know how to handle crisis. Right, so all of us are mothers, so we know that as a woman, as a mother, you know, you're not only working, but you also have to get your kids ready when they were young, and then you have to wear many hats. You know, you're a wife, you're a mom, and then on weekends for me it was like you're a coach. And my son was telling me, Mom, don't scream too hard, don't cheer too loud. They were embarrassed. And then also, you know, like you go on campings, and then what you have learned, our strengths as a woman is teamwork, because you know that it takes a village to take care of the family. You partner with your husband, your spouse to raise the family. I personally have working all the times when my kids were young, and I relied on my in-law family, my family to chauffeur the kids to sport events or to after school activities, because I couldn't make it all the time. So I think that as women, we are very good at handling crisis situation, and we're good at multitasking, and we're good at teamwork. And those are critical skill sets for become a leader.
I agree. That's a great point, Yao. I mean, as a mom of 3, I think all of that ability to balance work and home life is important. It's important not only for ourselves, but it's important for the people that we lead, right? Because we need to be mindful. They too have a lot of different things, whether they have children or not. All of us are juggling a lot of different things at the same time: career, work, personal situations. And I think it gives you perspective. I find that one of the greatest attributes of women leaders is the ability to be agile, flex to the situation. And I think you also, and appreciate how you got where you are and the people whose shoulders you stood on to get where you are. And you, I think all of us as leaders are committed to making sure that those that come behind us have even more opportunities than the opportunities that we were able to carve out for ourselves. Emma, anything?
I feel like I have to defend my husband because this is sort of a sexist conversation if you think about it from. I would say, what I do see is my husband has been integral in my career, and that we've had to work together to raise our 2 kids. So I do think that the generations that are coming behind us too, there's going to be more of that feeling of teamwork and integration. And a lot of the policies that have been put into place within the manpower world are actually facilitating families to be more cooperative and integrated. And I do think that will bleed over into our workplace as well. I would say, the biggest thing I see is the cooperation towards a common goal is growing. And I do see that one thing that, anytime you're trying to do dueling careers and other things is that you learn patience and you learn what, that heart is authorized. It's a combination of both. But I think as a leader, it makes you uniquely qualified to walk in your people's shoes as well and understand maybe what they're going through at any given time. That, if when COVID happened, if I didn't have kids at home, I know that my kids are only going to school maybe 2 days a week in some cases. I knew I couldn't just bring my workforce back, or I had to be considerate of allowing them to be there when their kids are home. And I think that women coming into the workplace and being the bleeding edge of a lot of cases where you have dual working families and other things, there's a greater understanding of what that give and take needs to look like. And I think we bring that into the workforce and that ability to listen to our people and try to consider, how can I make this work? If I was trying to make everybody fit into a square peg necessarily, it's more like there's a way to make this work. How do I do it?
That is such a great point. I mean, as I look at all the different manpower and personnel challenges that we have and that COVID has taught us how to work through, I so appreciate that. Even though I'm a working mom, there's a lot of people that aren't, right? But they all have things outside of the workplace that affect how they live their lives and how they can effectively, meet our mission. And so COVID's really brought that, I think, into perspective a little bit more. And I hope that as we come out of that, it's not just how has it impacted women in the workplace, but how has it affected all of us? And what are we going to do to make it better in the future? Jen, Yao, anything?
Yeah, and I think those are great comments, because it really is a balance. And I think that is something that is brought into the workplace by both genders, frankly, particularly now. It may not have been this like 20 years ago, but now it's a lot different. But I would echo what Kathy had said in terms of what have we learned during COVID? We learned the importance of family time. We learned the importance of togetherness. And I think we're missing some of that. And I think that if we leverage what we've learned over COVID, really continue this conversation on, is going to be really hugely powerful for us, because I don't think that we recognized how important it was for us to be together and how much we rely now on video to keep us together. And I think it's just powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, great. All right, I'm going to pivot.
I just have to, yes, and we have learned more about families and spending time with family. But I also have friends that say that, well, COVID made me realize that I need to work more, because staying in the house with a husband 24/7 is tough.
One of the things I think I've watched, at least as I struggled through how are we going to help our workforce adapt, was the connectivity piece too, right? How do we keep connected? And I think that's a skill that we bring to the table too, is that connectivity. That was key getting through COVID. As Jen said, the technology helped us do that. You have to be really mindful in the middle of a pandemic where you have the tools that you're not forgetting that people are really isolated. And so how do you stay connected? And I think, again, you bring that agility into the picture, you bring in the, the relationships that you have, and not forgetting that at the end of the day, we have so many interests that bind us and make us unique. And we've got to stay connected. So enough on that. I'm going to go ahead and change gears on us, ladies.
I just want to say one thing. Yeah, my husband is very happy that I kept working.
I want to talk a little bit about confidence. This session, we're trying to really focus on resiliency and related subjects. So talk a little bit, each of you, about how you develop the confidence to lead at your level. Hopefully you had an opportunity to see the Dr. Smith and Dr. Johnson last week when we had our lunch break, and they talked about men mentoring women, men leaning in and kind of helping women. But have you had mentors that have helped develop you as leaders, helped reinforce the confidence, or maybe help build the confidence that you've had to be leaders, whether they're female or male mentors? Talk a little bit about how you built your confidence and what kind of mentoring relationships you had that helped you with that. I think, Jen, you want to go first.
I do, because I have some relevant information based on the conversation last week. I started my federal career as a GS2, and I have worked my way up all through. And I would tell you, if I went back and talked to the GS7 Jen Latore, this would terrify her. She would not have wanted to have spoke to this large of a crowd. And it helped that we're behind a TV screen, but if you put me in front of an auditorium full of people, what would appear as very confident today would be not confident several years ago. So I remember this vividly because it was really a turning point for me. And it was I was working as an analyst. It was one of my first jobs. Had to give a presentation to a commanding officer. I wasn't actually tasked with giving the presentation. I was an analyst, and I did all the. There was an 04 who was supposed to give that presentation, and he took me aside and he said, "You did all the work. You did all of the analysis. You have so much to give, and you never say anything." And I said, "That's okay. I love what I do. I'm okay over here in the corner. Just go ahead. I know you're going to be set up for success." And he actually said, "No, you need to say something. You need to speak. I want you to give the brief." Scared me to death. But it was really the fact that when we walked into the room, he made it a safe place for me. He talked to the commanding officer about the fact that I was going to be delivering the brief, that I had done the information. He kind of set the room up that I was successful. Where I started to falter a little bit, he was there to help. And I would tell you, it was really powerful for me because it really allowed me to feel comfortable in those groups. And the more I got used to it, I actually developed a lot more confidence. And so I would say it's a practiced art. I remember talking to a lot of folks over my career about how do you handle this? How do you handle a conflict? And I will tell you, male or female, having those conversations and getting those opportunities was just hugely powerful for me. And so I have to say that first 04 that helped me, when he retired 15 years later, I helped him get a civilian job. And so it was actually developed over time that we actually were helping each other in this space. And so I would just advocate that there's mentors everywhere. It doesn't have to be formal. I would say leverage anybody that's available to you, and let's give everybody those opportunities to build that confidence, because it's not something that happens in a day.
Thanks, Jen. That's great. Admiral, I'm curious, how did you build your confidence? I mean, you were the first female commander of an air group. That's a big challenge to be the first in anything. But talk to us a little bit about, how did you build that confidence to be able to take that responsibility on, and who helped mentor you as you were going through your career?
I think the really interesting thing is I was so busy fighting to be able to have a career in the beginning because there was nobody doing what I wanted to do. And I'm sure that that's sort of other people, even on the civilian side, there's the same feeling in some cases. And you don't see anybody up above you that's doing what you want to do. And so you have to have what I used to call as a portfolio of mentors. So I find the person who is best at this job. Okay, so I go talk to that person and I ask whether they can mentor me in this capacity. But I do think that when you're at the beginning of something, that it is a real struggle to find anybody who looks like you ahead of you to be able to leverage. And so that portfolio of mentors, I had a tremendous number of men who, I mean, it was wildly unpopular to help a female naval aviator in the beginning of my career because there was still that feeling like we didn't belong. And there were many, many great male leaders at all levels who reached out and just worked with me. And so my confidence comes from their confidence in me in a lot of cases, is they had confidence that I could do the job. And then I would do the job, and then that you set your sight to the next thing that you wanted to do, and somebody would have confidence and mentor you and talk to you about it. And then, sometimes you just gotta, I'm gonna offend somebody, but sometimes you just gotta ignore the assholes too, because there's a ton of them out there. So, you just, if you want to go seek the people that are going to try to tell you can't do something, they're out there. So just take them and set them aside and just really concentrate on what you want to do. And I think that focus really helps. But that's why I wish Admiral Fanchetti could be here, because she's one of the few people, we've only gotten to know each other in the last 4 years. But I can look up at her as a surface warfare officer, family. She has a family. She's a mom. She's been a fleet commander. So she's one of the first women I've looked up and said, wow, she's got like the portfolio of things that I want to be. But we didn't know each other early on. And I hope that for everybody coming behind us, that they have those people that they can maybe reach out and have more than just one thing in common with, maybe 2 or 3 at the same time. But that's sort of how it all started.
Sure. I reflect back, and I've been getting asked a lot of questions this month about mentoring, and I'm really doing a lot of reflection about it. And I think often about the mentors that I've had in my career and how I sought them out. Similar to Jen, I was uncomfortable at first, and I still today get very uncomfortable in certain situations, and it's kind of forcing yourself to understand that. And I early on in my career, I think I recognized that was something that I had to overcome. So I looked for mentors who were different than me. I looked for mentors who were doing things that I didn't necessarily want to do, because I thought they would offer perspective to me. And I sought them out. And I think sometimes surprised them. If I went and I asked them, I'd say to them, hey, would you mind mentoring me, being a mentor for me? And sometimes they'd say, well, for me, everybody knows I started as an attorney. I don't practice law these days in this job, but I went and sought mentors in areas of law that I didn't practice in, because I knew that the people that I aspired to hold their jobs someday did a whole variety of things that I didn't understand and I didn't know how to do. And I needed to understand how to get there. And so I sought out people who were a little bit different, took a different track than I took, just to kind of get their views. It helps shape your thinking. It makes you think outside the box. But then I also had great mentors who were those advocates, right? Those people that pushed you forward. And I think we talked about this last week with Dr. Johnson and Dr. Smith. I had great mentors, male and female. And I would even say some of my male mentors were the best ones that I had. They were the ones who were pushing me out in front into fields and practice areas that I hadn't been in before, would be the ones who would talk about me in conversations where I wasn't there, to say, hey, you should go talk to her. You should think about putting her on this, working group, putting her on this. She can bring some perspective. She has talent. So I think having, again, that portfolio of mentors is so important, and you can't wait for them to find you. You've kind of got to go out and look for them. And as you do that, you don't even realize you're building your confidence that's going to serve you really well in the future. Yao, any thoughts?
Oh, I totally agree. But first, I am so glad to hear that the woman I admire that still do not have confidence in speaking, because I tell you, I have always been very self-conscious about my accent. And so constantly in my mind, I was thinking, I'm not a good public speaker. And so years ago, one of my, before he really became my mentor, or you could say he was one of the top mentors. And he didn't tell me, but I heard from other people saying that Mr. Oakwick, he was a retired two-star and then became an SS. Mr. Oakwick said he didn't understand what you were saying. Oh my gosh, that shocked me. A retired two-star, an SS, didn't understand what I was saying. So I went around and asked people, do you understand? It's my accent. And what finally one person told me, it wasn't your accent, your English is fine, but it's just how you present the information. And so I said, So I went and took a Toastmaster Club, and so they taught a few tidbits, and then that increased my confidence a little bit, but I would have to say that it's still practice. I still need lots of practice to have the confidence, like to be prepared for today. I'm nervous. I was so nervous and say, I hope, especially knowing that it will be on YouTube, it's like I was truly intimidated by that. But the lessons learned, that the more that I accepted these speaking engagement, the more confidence I would feel. But going back to having a mentor, strongly believe in it. I had mentors that I didn't even know they were my mentors, like my peers. For example, Vice Admiral Moore. The reason that I went to the Coast Guard, because he pushed me out of the door. I was his deputy. I was the deputy program manager in the aircraft carriers, deputy for Admiral Moore, who was Captain Moore back then. And I was just loving it. And I truly believe I wanted to stay and serve the Navy. And he pushed me out and he said, hey, you are very good, but I don't have an SS for you. The Coast Guard has an SS, go over there. And he helped me to put the package together and apply. And lo and behold, I got it. And so the mentors also provide you the insight that you didn't even know that you have the capabilities. And then what's also important to boost your confidence is a group of network. And it could be man or woman. And that when you have some doubt or you don't feel confident, you can always count upon, and they would listen to you. And Jan Latour is one of those support. We have a group of support at the gym. Before COVID, at 5 a.m., we would meet at the gym and we exercise, but mostly we talk and support each other, especially when we have a tough problems going on. And so I highly recommend to everybody having mentors, a portfolio of mentors, and also have a strong group of network support.
Thanks, Zhao. I hope everybody's picking up. We have such authentic leaders here, and we've all got different experiences, and we've all benefited from people all around us. And every job that we've had, whether they were our bosses, our peers, or the subordinates that worked for us, we've learned from them. And I think that bolsters your confidence every time you take on a new challenge. But I really appreciate the authenticity that we're hearing today. So thank all of you. I'm going to pivot a little bit to some of the Q&A. So if you see me turning, you understand why. And I also just want to throw out there for TV land that Admiral Joyner and I are sitting here without our masks on, but both of us have been fully vaccinated. We are trying to social distance. So if any of you have concerns that we're sitting here and we're not vaccinated, we are. And so we took that into consideration so that you could understand us on the TV cam today. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch. I think we have a specific question to the Admiral. Have you received feedback from your mentors, and how did you use that in setting your next goal?
I think it's really important, and I said that the ASFLs thing, some of those people gave me some really good feedback. I just may not have liked it. So that's one of the things that if I do have friction with somebody, once the friction is diffused, because you can't ask, it's really hard to ask somebody to mentor you while you have friction going on. But when it's all past, if you can sit down with them and go, okay, now that this is over, can you tell me what I could be doing better, or what I could have been doing better, or how did we end up in this situation, and how can I avoid it in the future as a leader and as a subordinate, because good following is just as important as good leading. Because I have had bosses where we were butting heads, and when we were finally done and the paperwork was written and everything, I sat down and I said, I would really appreciate your candid feedback on what I can do better in the future. And so that part, finding mentors that you like hearing what they say is not always going to serve you well.
Yeah.
And there's two things in the aviation world, and I think it's probably in the professional world, is that professionals invite scrutiny. You ask people, give me feedback. I may not like it. But if you're a true professional, you're going to ask for that feedback and need it. And also the other part is that somebody who's taking the time out to tell you that you're doing something wrong and sit down with you is somebody who's usually vested in your performance and your success. So trying to take off the personal nature of it and sort of go, this person is taking time out to give me feedback, and I need to take this and see what I can do with it. Very much different than somebody who's just being a jerk to you. There's two different things there. But even the toughest and hardest bosses, sometimes I've learned the most out of, because I didn't like working for them, but boy, did I learn a lot when I was done, one way or another. So I think that feedback is really important to bring home and put back into your toolbox and see what I would do the next time around, because I don't want to go into the same, La Brea tar pit or bear trap or whatever I wandered into. I want to learn from what I've done.
Yeah, I think some of those tough critiques that we get when you apply them, not only do you not want to hear them, sometimes you're just not aware of them, right? You're just not self-aware. And sometimes that critique seems tough because you're not aware of it. And so it catches you by surprise, right? And so I think what I've learned, sometimes you have to lick your wounds and take that in stride a little bit before you really adopt it and recognize that it's something that can actually help you grow and change a little bit. Jen, I don't want to hog the microphone. Anything you want to add there?
I agree with the Emerald said. Sometimes you learn a lot more from the critics that if you set aside your ego, and as women, we don't really have a lot of ego, but if we set aside, we do learn something. I remember years ago, I was a GS-13 preparing a brief for my boss, pulling together the slides and presenting. And he was looking at it, he asked questions. And I just didn't know. I just knew what on the slide, but I didn't know what beneath. And so instead of telling me directly that he was telling me the story, and he was saying, well, Yao, I was in Vietnam and I was the pilot. And you saw on the airplanes hundreds of buttons. And imagine if I don't know what those buttons, what those were for, it's a matter of life and death. Oh my gosh, it's still stuck with me until today. Right? So you have to know your material and you deliver it gently and nicely, and it's still stuck with me until today. And so you better know your stuff.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Jen, anything else?
Yeah, and I echo everything that Yao has said. And one of the things that's stuck with me, and it was another senior leader who had just gotten a promotion, and he said, no one's ever going to tell me the truth again. And so it was a recognition of the more senior you become, the less people tell you the truth. And so you almost have to make a concerted effort to go back it's true. And so, you know, you look at, Abraham Lincoln, as a matter of fact, he put people on his cabinet that fought against him the whole way because he recognized he needed people that were going to challenge him and that were going to tell him things that he may not want to hear, but he desperately needed to. And so I think it's a great comment from the chat in terms of, you know, good and bad mentors or really good, strong advice, honest advice. It's really helpful for all of us. So thank you.
Great. All right, I'm going to turn here and read another question that we received today. So one of our participants has read Athena Rising, and in that book, they make the statement that women are more hesitant to apply for a job they don't think they're qualified for. So in thinking about that, can any of us give an example of a time where we extended ourselves for something, and what helped you take that risk? So perhaps a situation where you felt you weren't qualified, but you went for it anyway. What kind of motivated you? What helped you do that?
Well, actually, for me, it's the job I'm in. I frankly, I was an N1 at CNIC. I had done, you know, programming and analytic work most of my career. And it was Mr. Iceland who said, why don't you put your name in for this? And I said, I'm not an engineer. I don't think I could lead an engineering command. And he said, I need someone who can lead people and money and work processes and really help the command in a different way. And I was really scared and nervous, but the fact that he had faith in me and that he had, he supported me and that he was there, that I could ask a lot of questions, it really pushed me to do this. And I will tell you, looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was amazing. And it allowed me to grow exponentially as a senior leader in the diversity of experience. But on my own, left to my own devices, I probably would never have applied. I wouldn't have thought that I would have been able to do it. Over.
Thank you.
I would say that what I see the most is that a fear of failure is preventing us from leaning forward and trying to do whatever it is at the next level. And that if you consistently are afraid to try that thing, that next harder thing, and you can't believe in yourself, you're going to have a really difficult time growing beyond the job you're currently in. And I see it, and don't take this wrong because our backers are infinitely important, but probably 90% of the women who are piloting are opting for the back seat of two-seat aircraft. And because they're more comfortable in that background role where they're supporting, but they're not necessarily called on to be that lead agent that either the success or failure point where you can visibly see some of what goes on. And I think we have to work our way through that, because the corollary to staying in our safe space is that you don't grow. So you don't get that next job and you don't qualify to be an SES because you don't have the portfolio, you haven't had the exposure. And, I've seen men that are wildly incompetent, but are wildly confident that they can do things, and they fail their way in success eventually because they figure it out. And, they get there, and I don't know how to change that, but I think half of that is recognizing that in yourself, that when you don't want to apply for that next job because you think you're incompetent, not competent, not incompetent, but not competent or not capable, that you ought to take that leap of faith that you are and let other people give you feedback and see whether you can't grow into that job. And so I fight with myself all the time to try to make sure that I don't fall into that trap.
I find it fascinating. I've been thinking about this question a lot lately too. When we're in school and we're progressing through the grades, we know we finished whatever, pick a grade, 5th grade. I finished 5th grade. I know everything a 5th grader needs to know. We fly right into the next grade. But there's something once you hit adulthood where you start to hesitate. And I think comes back to, do you have the skills and are you willing to push yourself forward? But we kind of need someone to help us push us along sometimes. Sometimes we just don't have that inner confidence to do it. We need others to kind of push us. And I would say, leap. Knowing that you have those skills, whatever they are, whatever field you're in, whatever you're doing, you've built confidence to some level or you wouldn't be where you are. So it's kind of self-propelling to a degree that we need to kind of motivate ourselves to try.
Right. I don't want to hog the time, but if you just look ahead of you and go, I could do that person's job, then you probably ought to go try to do it.
That's right. That's right.
And you probably feel that every day. That's all I want to say is you're probably looking at somebody going, I could do that job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think Admiral Franchetti has joined us. Welcome.
Hello. I'm so sorry to be jumping in at the last second, but I did want to say hello and thank you very much for organizing these.
Oh, we're so pleased you could join us. We were just talking about confidence and taking risks and perhaps thinking about a job that that you weren't sure you were ready for and how you got yourself ready to jump into that. So maybe, Admiral, if you want to kind of join that conversation, maybe that's something you could talk about. You've had a lot of different challenges in your career. You've risen to the level of a 3-star, not an easy feat for a woman leader in our department. So talk to us a little bit about a time when you had that stretch. I'm sure you've stretched for a lot of jobs. What motivated you? How did you get there?
Well, sure. Yeah, I think that would accurately describe my entire career, I would say. First of all, it is always helpful to know and see other people that have done the same job that you've done, whether they're male or female. And have a really good discussion with them about the job and learning all you can about the job ahead of time. I think part of what makes us uncomfortable to make those leaps is that we feel unprepared, or we feel that we're not good enough, or we feel that we're an imposter. And, going around and talking to people. Before I went to 6th Fleet, for example, I talked to 6 different 6th Fleet commanders ahead of time to get a good feel for, what the job had been like for them. So, preparing yourself just so you feel comfortable taking the jobs is really important. Similarly, I was here in the J5 before, but I've also talked to, 4 different J5s about how they approach the job. So again, really helpful to have that sort of experiential understanding from them. I think the second one, though, is that you do have to imagine yourself in the job. And if you can think through how you're going to be in the job and how you're going to act in the job, and that may have already been discussed, so I apologize. But if you don't have a vision, how you're going to walk into that meeting, how you're going to present yourself, then when you go to the meeting, it's going to be like, oh, what do I do now? But if you can kind of do a mental rehearsal, before you step into the job or before you go into a different meeting or before, whatever the thing is going to be, just take that 30 minutes as part of your prep to say, all right, this is what this meeting is going to be like. This is what the audience is going to be like. Here's all the stakeholders. Here's how I need to interact with them, and just have a good vision before you go in. That's always been super helpful for me.
Great. Yeah, Admiral Joyner had just said right before you said that, so a very similar type of thought. If you imagine yourself in the position that you look at the person who's in a job that perhaps you're aspiring to, you think you can do it, you need to jump. So that's kind of that same looking forward, kind of forward thinking. So I'm going to wrap it up with one last question because I know we're running short on time here. I'm going to ask any one of you to jump in and answer this question. So how do you, and I think all of you, and I've had the privilege of working with every one of you at some point, how do you balance being nice and approachable with being tough when you need to be? Because that's a challenge, I think, for any leader. So could any one of you talk to that?
I want to hear Admiral Franchetti because I've seen you do it before. You do both really well.
Well, first of all, I think I'm generally a nice person. I think hopefully people think that I'm very empathetic. When I was the XO of a ship, they used to call me the mom, and they would give me, Mother's Day presents, XO, the mom. So I do have sort of that, innate personality, but I think it comes from just, being a professional, but also setting high standards and communicating the standards very well. Because I think when you're a leader, people need to know what you expect. You should lay that out for them right up front. And then as long as you stick to that standard and you can continue to hold people accountable, and it's always professional, but you've got to have that standard. And that does not take away from your ability to be nice or empathetic. But if you don't start out with a high standard and you don't stick to your standard consistently, then you can get yourself trapped by trying to be empathetic and trying to understand all the reasons that this product cannot be delivered on time. And, you know, my dog ate the homework and all of those other things. But if you just keep setting that standard, I think that's really important as a leader.
Great advice.
But you shouldn't lose yourself, right? So that is the last piece I would say. You know, we all can only operate within the bounds of our personality. You know, people will genuinely know if you're acting and you are not being you. So again, you kind of move to the left and right limits of your own personality for that. My 2 thoughts on that.
Great, thank you. Jen, Yao, Admiral? I think we have about 2 minutes.
Yeah. For me, I learned it by watching my mom. Is that my mom was a supervisor and she loved her employees like her children. And I would say, and she hold them accountable. But she is the kindest person. I remember when one of her employees was a handicapped person, and other people made fun of him, but she feathered him, and it is and I saw the love coming back. So that's I wanted to be a kind boss because I can. I learned that if you love your employees like your family, your children, they will see it and they will respond to it. But just like Admiral Panchetti said, but we have to have standard because at the end of the day, we have to show results, and we can do that both. Because if we have relationship with them before, during difficult times, they will know that you are demanding, but you can be kind.
Thank you. I want to stop here. I want to thank every one of you for joining me today. I am mindful of the time. I think we could probably go on for another hour. Jen, Yao, Admiral Franchetti, Admiral Joyner, thank you very much for joining me. I want to thank all the presenters that have joined us over the course of the last month. I hope all of you that are dialing in have learned a lot from these great leaders. It's been such a privilege for me to have these one-on-one conversations with them. I can't leave without thanking Ashley. She is the magic behind the curtain who has really made sure that all of this has worked over the course of the month. She's entertained us as she's demonstrated her culinary skills and her IT skills. So talk about versatility and flexibility. Ashley is the real deal. So thank you, Ashley, for everything that you've done. And I ask all of you to look for the future and look for additional information. Hopefully we'll be able to continue these dialogues with a new group of leaders and some new subjects. And probably it'll convene once a month going into the future. But thank you for your interest. Thank you for your participation. And I hope you've learned something. Bye, everyone.